think that there are distinct stories, both in the Bible and in life, that indicate that God's love can sometimes be defined as nothing less than reckless.
Welcome to the Sifted Wheat Podcast with Leslie Lamb, a counselor by profession, a minister of truth, and a lover of people. This is a safe place where she sets a path for others to learn how to move through hard seasons with confidence and grace, encouraging your faith, empowering your choices, and challenging your perceptions through the Word, the wisdom from years of counseling others, and her own experience of being sifted. Here's Leslie.
I've personally always loved the song Reckless Love. It was a love song that reminded me where I've been and how God fought to win me back to where I am. But some people have strong feelings about that song, so strong that they might walk out of a worship service if it plays. And when I ask them what makes it offensive, the response has been, God isn't reckless. He isn't careless in the way that he handles us. No argument there. But we're not talking about the character of God. We're talking about the love of God. And I want to ask the person, have you been a recipient of his reckless love? Not reckless by his standards, but by ours. Have you encountered God when he shows up in the depth of sin to rescue us? Have you experienced God in places that a respectable God wouldn't set foot in? I have. And I've heard hundreds of stories. See, when I read that while we were yet sinners, Christ died for us, that seems pretty reckless. God didn't choose death only for the people that would accept him and call him Lord. His act of love was also for those who would choose to have nothing to do with him, who would hate him, by all intents and purposes would ignore him or choose other gods outside of him. That's pretty reckless. And that part, while we were yet sinners, hangs on. While we were yet in adultery, while we were yet addicted to pornography, while we were yet involved with substances or prostituting ourselves, while we were yet thinking we were righteous enough, while we were planning to trap people in their sin or pridefully holding a banner of self-love, Christ died for us. That's reckless. Would you do that? Would you lay down your life for a person that didn't care if you lived or died? Not likely. And it's okay. I would struggle with that too. Jesus even said, you might die for those who love you, but what credit is that? Even the wicked would do that. One thing that being sifted did for me was it taught me humility. See, prior to my moral failures, I could hold on to a little bit of pride like the Pharisee in the synagogue with the tax collector. Well, at least I didn't do that. At least I'm not like her or him. But when I met the reckless love of God, my righteousness was rags. I'll never forget the day that I met her. Her ebony skin glowed like radiant light from the inside. She smiled at me, and joy filled the room. I could see Jesus in her. Then she said, "Do you know how I came to know Jesus?" Smiling, I shook my head. He met me in my bathtub, and I've never been the same. Interesting, right? Interesting start to a story. I was intrigued. So she went on to tell me that she was a former addict, that she'd been a prostitute to help feed her appetite and had been desperate for a fix. There's a lot of details I don't remember, but the crux of her story hung in this reckless moment. Seeking comfort from the shakes, she ran a bath. She was remembering a conversation from earlier that day, and someone had told her, if you just had Jesus, you wouldn't live like this. It made her mad, she said. Like she had chosen this life, she said. So in the bath, she cried out in anger, God, if you care about me, you'll meet me in this bath and you will give me a high I won't forget. You know that saying, be careful what you ask? Well, she told me that no sooner had the words left her lips that it hit her. The Spirit of God met her in a complete wash of love and sensation that was more powerful and intense than any chemical high she had yet experienced. She said it lasted long enough to take her breath away and subsided before she couldn't physically take it anymore. Explain that to me. You can't without describing something reckless about his love. It doesn't make sense. It isn't the cleaned up, wholesome version of Holy Spirit encounters we hear about in Sunday school. And yet, her life was transformed from that encounter. She never had that kind of experience again, she told me. But drugs could never satisfy her appetite again either. She surrendered that night. He tore through the wall of her apartment and met her in a bath begging for a fix. And she was never the same. That's the Spirit of God. My story isn't as extreme, but he did meet me in my sin and my shame, huddled in a pit of my own making where I was sure he would never show up, and yet he did. And he told me, get up. I have more for you. I don't want to leave you here. Those lies you believe are killing you, and I am going to reveal my truth, my love, my grace, my mercy. And he did. And he is still to this day. The story of the prodigal son, Tim Keller states in his book, Prodigal God, could very well be known as the prodigal father. See, without a cultural context, that just looks like a beautiful story of a father loving his son who had sinned and come back home. But with a cultural understanding, we realize that he was doing more than getting up to meet his son. See, culturally, his son had abandoned the family. Culturally, his son had pretty much said, I wish you were dead, and I want what belongs to me. That's shameful. That's disrespectful. And in a culture of shame and respect, that was unheard of and unforgivable. So when the son was coming back, he wasn't just coming back to meet the father. He was coming back to meet the community. And the community, by law, had every right to stone him. And the love of the father was that he was not going to let that be the judgment for his son. It was this beautiful moment where Jesus shares a story that the audience would have recognized as affection and connection and life-saving intervention. Actually, the father was laying down his life. He was covering his son and declaring him worthy. Where am I getting that? All he did was run. Well, in that day and age, a nobleman did not run. See, in order to run, he would have to lift up his robes. And if he lifted up his robes, he would reveal his legs. And if he exposed his legs, that would be shameful. But in this story, Jesus is telling, not only did the father see him, but the father lifted up his robes before the community that was there to stone the son, taking the shame upon himself, laying down his life for his son, and running to meet him, not with a message of shame, but a message of acceptance, not just for the son, but also for the community to say, my son has right standing with me. The penalty for him is not death. The penalty for him is not what you would say, but I offer him an extension of myself. I offer him a robe of righteousness instead of this garment of shame. I offer him a ring that declares that he is connected to me and I am connected to him. And the beauty of that is that not only is it a moment where the Father meets the community with his grace for his Son, but in so doing, he offers a celebration. He was saying, not only is this not the day that my son will die, but because he was home, because he is here, I am going to throw a party. And you all with stones in your hands are welcome to join us. What they had intended for him was harm, but what God intended for them was forgiveness. What the Father intended for them was forgiveness and a celebration. Such the Father's heart. The response of the community was, stone him. The response of the Father is, look at me, uncovered and exposed and doing what is considered disrespectful. Take the weight of your looks of shame and point them at me, not my child. That is the reckless love of the Father. The very places that no respectable person would go, God shows up. In bedrooms, in front of screens where fantasies are being played out, in trap houses where women and men are barely alive, in police cars and jail cells where consequences catch up with bad choices, on battlefields and boardrooms and bars and clinics and hospital beds and nurseries, wherever the hurting are, he is there. One of his names is Jehovah Shammah, the Lord, he is here. His reckless love meets us there. Wherever there is, he is. That's pretty reckless. Not by his standards, but by ours. And I'm left echoing the words of the song, I couldn't earn it, and I don't deserve it. Still, he gives himself away. Oh, the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God.